Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out D&D Ace. This is a game I've actually been looking forward to for some time because a very generous demo of it was given out on the Steam Game Festival. Which one? Don't bloody remember, it was one of the three. But yes, they gave out a relatively generous demo. I never got to the end of it, but I did play enough of the game to realize that hey, this has actually got some potential, and now I've played it more in full, which is about 3 hours if I'm being honest, and it's still pretty good. It's nothing particularly unique, but there are a few things to like about it, and it's still pretty damn good on top of all of that. So, it's got the pretty bog standard roguelike formula. You go through procedurally generated levels, you use them to get upgraded cards, you use them to get shards to unlock more cards, more trinkets, a couple of extra abilities, and you try and get to the end without getting yourself killed. You're probably not going to pull it off the first time, but as you keep going through, you're going to get more and more and more better at it until you finally manage to conquer it. And there is a fair amount to do in this game. In those 3 hours, I've managed to get up to the second boss, but I have gotten my shit kicked in. So, that's a thing. So this is a pretty easy to understand concept. You just wander around the left stick. You've got 4 different slots that you have access to with individual cards. And you put cards in these slots and they give you different abilities. And the cards can be anything from evasive maneuvers, those are usually in blue, to regular physical attacks, which are in the purple or the pink, to this sort of like traps and other sorts of attacks, which are in the yellow. And you can swap these cards out at any time. So if you don't like what button the card's on, or if you want to assign it to another slot, you can do that. But where this game really becomes interesting is when you start mixing and matching the card abilities, because not only do they have their own individual abilities, they've also got their own secondary slots, and these secondary slots can also be occupied by cards, and these cards will actually add extra abilities to it. Sometimes these abilities can be quite simple, like you put the Titan Punch in the secondary slot of a purple attack, and you just get a status effect on that attack, which is entirely useful, don't get me wrong, it's just pretty basic. But then, you've got a couple of other things that can happen, like if you take the Bouncing Wand, which goes in between all sorts of different enemies, and then you put the secondary slot as the cards attack, which fires out 5 cards in like a shotgun blast-esque arc. It actually turns into, every time the wand bounces on something, it launches 5 cards which home in on targets. And there are all sorts of these weird little combinations to find, and as a result, it makes experimenting and finding the tweaks and the playstyles that you have really enjoyable, because you can either go for something that has an absolute ton of damage backing it up, you can go for something with a lot of status effects, you can go for something that just completely goes off the wall with the amount of projectiles and bullshit you have flying out of you, and you can do it any way you like. I usually prefer having at least one dodge ability, but if you want to have nothing but attacks and just be constantly sending out attacks, like no matter what you're doing, you can do that. You want to work a trap-heavy playthrough using nothing but yellow cards, you can do that. Wouldn't recommend doing anything that's entirely related to dashes, because there isn't very much attack power behind them, but that's also quite possible. That's the main unique thing about the game, though. That's the main thing that keeps you interested. Everything else is pretty bog standard. The level layouts aren't particularly engaging. They don't have much in the way of secrets to find. It's more or less just go down the paths. If you can unlock a door with the key, you unlock it and you just continue on. You've got keys that you need to find throughout your individual runs that'll let you unlock new doors later. You've also got branching paths, but that's nothing new. And at the end of, or should I say, at the beginning of every stage, you have the opportunity to pick up a card or refill your health completely, which is at least a nice choice that you need to make, along with being able to get yourself shards by defeating enemies in the main game, which you can then use to unlock new abilities and new cards to appear on the field. It's very Dead Cells in that way. And you've also got trinkets that you can buy, again, at the start of new levels, that you can only buy one at a time, and it costs you money to reset, but they still come with some useful abilities, like being able to hold on before you die, having less damage taken, get more potions but have them be less effective. Just generally useful, but otherwise not particularly amazing. Just generally competent and workable abilities is what I'm trying to say. It's all backed up by one other thing though. The game itself is incredibly smooth. We're talking a good 200 FPS plus no matter what. There's very little in the way of options because this is a two-dimensional isometric game. You don't really need that much. And the game runs really well. They did a great job with optimizing it, and it was immensely smooth the entire time I was playing. Just don't have like more than one VSync turned on at a time and you'll usually be fine. There are some other options. You might know that the main villain of the game is massively chatty up the top of the screen there with the subtitles. You do have the ability to turn that down, which is nice, although I've left it on for this footage in order to just give you a better idea of what's going on. There are also, of course, the usual set of audio sliders, and you can't rebind your controls on gamepad, but you can on keyboard. However, they very heavily recommend gamepad, and so would I. It's just much more comfortable. It's got a decent enough auto-aim, although you do need to take the time to aim your shots. You can't just throw them out and expect them to hit the enemy, which is nice. And it just plays really well. It picked up my DualSense via Steam input, translated them all to Xbox 360 inputs, and I just went. It was fine. Very little you need to do. There's like 1 2-minute story cutscene at the very beginning. There are some optional ones that turn up like before bosses and like just before any particular level. Just to give you an idea of how just snooty and how much of an asshole the guy is who got you into this situation in the first place. And there's also the brain work with me here, brain work with me here. And there's also the 2 girls you get sucked in with. They all have good enough voice acting. It's not trying to be Hades, it's just trying to have them there as sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, they generally need to be there. They have a job to do, and they do it. That's pretty much all they're there for, and it's fine. Doesn't mean that this game is particularly engaging in its story like Hades. Doesn't mean that the action is incredibly in-depth like, say, Dead Cells. But Dandy Ace is still pretty good at what it does. I am enjoying the gameplay a lot. There is a lot to uncover, there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to get around with, and the gameplay is incredibly smooth and a lot of fun to play. Just because the action is well-paced, well-balanced, and very tight. So I really don't have that much bad to say about it. The only downside to it being that while it is a smooth game and I enjoy playing it, it's probably not going to get much sunlight for itself, especially since it came out a few months after Hades. Actually, when did Hades come out? Shit, that was back last year, wasn't it? But yeah, you've got games like Hades and The Binding of Isaac Repentance came out like this, not the same day, but very close to the same time this did. I feel like this game is going to lose a bit of the spotlight, which is a shame. Although it does have something like 220 positive reviews on Steam last time I looked, so it seems to be doing pretty well for itself. Which is good. It's basic, but what it does really well. And the customizing your attacks with the card system gives it just that little bit of playstyle variance and longevity and in experimentation that you look for in these sorts of games. It's just a shame they had to lock so much of it behind the bloody Dead Cells style, collect the shards, give them to the people to unlock the cards sort of system, because yeah, it just makes everything take a little bit to get unlocked. But nevertheless, I really enjoyed Dandy Ace.
She's not only extremely elegant.
I will say that I didn't pay for it. I got a review code. But if I was back then and I was like, am I going to pick this up? I'd say go for it. If you're a fan of these sorts of games, this is worth your time. Even if it's just kind of a come down game when you're in between runs of Hades or The Binding of Isaac, still pretty damn good for that. It's also got some good presentation, some good voice acting, although there's not that much of a story to worry about. And it's just a fun, solid roguelike.
Oops. Sorry again, lady.
Nothing wrong with that in my personal opinion. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.
It's like trying to teach an ape how to dine with proper cutlery.
Cut. What?
Maybe it's time for me to teach you another lesson.
You look like you could use some firepower. Yeah. Celebrate while you can. Next time you will see.
Okay, this is taking forever. Hey, Mr. Ace!
You can't go back, even if you try. Ahead you'll go, and soon you'll face your doom. Come on, Dandy Ace. Time to test your amazing magic tricks. tried hand-to-hand for a little. Only a fool trusts his life to his card. More angry enemies. My tricks are getting better and better. Hey, no parking inside the palace, wagon person. You'll get a ticket. Correct. Now you'll be overrun by enemies. Isn't that a poisonous cupcake? Stay away! You're going to pay for that! Seriously, these foes are expensive. It's dangerous to go alone. Take whatever you found there. Come on, Dandy Ace. Cut my guy some slack. Look how many minions, and there's no escape. I'm so brilliant. Hey, this cupcake is not for you. I knew I should have sent more minions. Oh, well. You're getting good at this. I'll have to have a talk with my minions.